Just how many boats can a giant shark eat? And will Winnie the Pooh's new film be pushed aside by the latest Spike Lee joint? Oh, bother. We discuss this and more today on The Real Review, so stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. Everybody, I'm here with Joel Isamegalodon Cunningham.
Oh, man, you took mine.
Really?
Yeah. I can't believe that was like the most obvious one, though. So
You can say it if you want.
I'll come up with it. Well, I'll just do Jason Statham. Hey,
Yeah.
that's my
All right.
impression of a Jason Statham.
Well done, Joel Cunningham.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. He's got the most distinct style to his voice. I don't know. Like, you know where it comes from. Like, it's obviously, English.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, it's Scottish, right? So I know what it's Scottish. I don't know. But it's like, even that still, it's still got his own little twist on it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
great. And,
Kind of this ruggedness to it.
yeah, and I don't know if you're familiar with sort of his history of like Jason Statham's like background. He lived a pretty hard life and sold watches on the street and all this other stuff. And
I knew he did like diving or something like that at one point in time.
yeah, I mean, he lived a pretty rough life growing up, from what I understand, and then he kind of eventually broke into the acting world. Pretty amazing story.
He broke in like the Italian Job.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Jason Statham, I need to be in all these films, right? Yeah, so
That's super fun.
super fun.
But yeah, guys, hey, welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about a few things. If you're not familiar with the concept of what we do here on the show, The Real Review, you have myself, you have Joel. We kind of approach movie reviewing with two different perspectives. I am a little bit more
Rock and roll.
Yeah, rock and
I'm a
roll.
little bit rock
When it
and
comes
roll.
to like some of the technical elements, I'm a little bit forgiving. I'm more about, how does it make me feel? Did I enjoy that? Did I have fun? Not to say I can't get into some of the nitpicky stuff, but that's really where Joel comes into play. He gets nitpicky, he gets negative and tears
It's a
it apart.
given.
It's
that's what I would say. I'm a given nitpicker, and you're kind of like an occasional nitpicker.
right. Yeah.
I'm a proud member,
It's
card-carrying
it's
member.
like pessimism and optimism,
Oh, okay.
kind of.
Yeah,
a
kind of
little
like that,
bit.
yeah. I was actually making a play off of another film we're going to be talking about, the BlacKkKlansman, which I don't know how to pronounce the name of it.
BlacKkKlansman.
Yeah, the card-carrying member thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but anyway, that's kind of how the show works. Joel, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody how they can get connected with us?
Sure. So we've got some great ways to get connected to the podcast. We have our website, which is realreviewmedia.com. We'd also encourage you to check out our Facebook, where we post a lot of content on there, which is facebook.com/realreviewmedia. We both have Instagram and Twitter as well for our podcast and vidcast on occasions. We're not doing the vidcast this time, but when we do, you can find out more about our Instagram and Twitter searching us at Real Review Media. And then, as mentioned, we do have the YouTubes. It's youtube.com/Real Review.
The
right?
Real
The
Review.
Real Review.
Yep.
Yeah, I should know that. And then finally, we love to hear from you. We love to hear your thoughts and perspectives, any of your opinions and input into what we're doing and how you feel like we're doing, thoughts on films that you've seen and shows. Send us an email, realreviewmedia@gmail.com. And I'm going to have to adjust the way I'm sitting, Matt, because
Yeah, you should figure that out.
I'm halfway between a lay down and a sit down, and it's just that
I don't
weird.
even know why you started like that.
I don't know. I thought it would be more comfortable, because we're not doing the vidcast. I could kind of recline a little bit, and it
kind of
just
relax.
yeah. It's like it was like I constantly felt like I was in a state of falling. Yeah, it was how that was working.
Super fun.
Yeah, I wasn't leaning. I wasn't sitting. So yeah.
Well,
there.
good. Well, you go ahead and get yourself adjusted. I'm going to
good.
go ahead and intro us into the first film that we're going to talk about. We both saw this
Do it.
movie.
Do it.
And it's called The Meg.
The
or
Meg.
The Meg.
Yes.
However you want to say that. So
I
this
prefer
movie,
the Mig.
Yeah. The Mig. Anyways, after escaping an attack by what he claims was a 70-foot shark, Jonas Taylor must confront his fears to save those trapped in a sunken submersible. And it's really more than that. That's kind of like the first half.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say fears.
Right. Yeah.
Jason Statham, I don't think has ever been afraid in any movie.
He does
ever.
something kind of towards the end of the first half of the movie that I would say I would have said nope to real quick, and
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people would have.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, why? No, thank you. And he's like, I'll do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Get out
Yeah.
of here. Nobody in their right mind would do that.
I will say one of the things about this film is that immediately it slaps you in the face that this is like a PG-13 outing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, not to jump right into the negatives too much, but
But if there's anybody that's going to do that, it's going to be
it's
you.
going to be me,
Yeah.
the nitpicker card member. Yeah, card carrying member. There was like an opening scene that's kind of designed to set up Jason Statham's backstory and where he's hopefully going to develop out of over the course of the film,
Right.
which is like the very obvious, like, I'm doing my job because I care about people, but then something horrible happens and I get blamed for it.
Right.
And he goes into this, and I'm not going to spoil things too much here. I don't think people are going to care too much, but he goes into the submersible that he's trying to save these people out of, and there's this guy who's in there,
Yeah.
and he's like, I need help, I can't walk. And I'm thinking, like, this is a shark movie. This is, Jason Statham. It's going to be like this guy's leg is like hanging off, or like some,
Right.
gaseous thing, or it's
Right.
like he's missing his leg or something. And they're like, the camera like pans down to his leg, and it's like this like sliver of a cut. It's like, it's like 1 inch long, and it's like not even like, it's basically like a surface level cut. And I'm like, really, bro? Like, that's what started. I was like, okay, PG-13.
Beyond, maybe it was something deeper. Maybe it was a femur.
Maybe if
maybe
it was
the
like
cut
a deeper.
was just happened to be there.
Well, I'm saying maybe the cut was emotional. So I thought that's where you were
It's like
going.
he's like, my emotions just aren't in check right now. I need
It
help
cut my
walking.
leg, but really cut my spirit and soul. Yeah, but that put a really bad taste in my mouth.
Really?
As far as
Okay, I didn't-
what to expect as far as intensity.
Right.
You
This movie would have. Let me just go on first saying directed by John Turteltaub, obviously starring Jason Statham, Bing Lee, Rainn Wilson, Cliff Curtis, Winston Chow, Ruby Rose, Paige Kennedy, Robert Taylor, a number of people. Also Sophia Kai, who I enjoyed.
Yes. She's a big Chinese actress.
Right.
She's well known over there.
This movie, I will say this, I think this movie would have been better suited as
I was
an
making a
R-rated
joke, by the
film.
way. She's a kid. She might be a big name over in China. I don't know. She's just a young child. Yeah.
Anyway.
She's huge over there. Sorry.
No, you're good. So I think that this movie would have benefited from being potentially R-rated.
I think so.
It seemed like, and the reason why I say that is because I don't think it was made with being PG-13 in mind. I feel like they made it and had to cut back stuff.
I would agree. Yeah.
It's always better to make it with what you have in mind and keep it that way rather than having to like cut out sections of film or footage because it's too graphic to accommodate a PG-13 audience.
Yeah.
So I had enough fun with this movie going into it. My predisposition to enjoying shark movies and monster movies, that helped. I did like some of the, and I was telling you about this earlier. I do like the prospect of what the science sets up in the beginning, what that means for future installments for this movie, because this movie is making money.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to see some stuff happening down the road with it.
I think the big reason this is making as much money as it is China.
Yeah.
Because this is a film that in so many ways was designed to appeal to both the American and the Chinese market. I mean, they included Chinese actors, very famous ones over in China. They set the entire film for the most part in China or around China. There's just so much about it that I'm just kind of like, okay, you're really trying to win over that audience while still releasing it because Chinese people, for the most part, really love the American films.
It's made more money in China than it has here.
Right.
Overall, it's made $318 million on a $130 million production budget, so it's doing fine.
Yeah.
And I think that just opens more possibilities. I love shark movies because I think sharks are terrifying.
I like good shark movies. I don't like movies that are lowest common denominator.
This isn't. I don't feel like this is that though, in my opinion, because I feel like that's what Sharknado is.
I feel like this is a slightly bigger budget version of Sharknado.
It's not as ridiculous.
It's not quite as ridiculous. Like they tried.
The thing
was they didn't have the concept is ridiculous, obviously. I mean, the idea that there's this giant, huge sharks that are just kind of floating somewhere underneath, deep in the water in the Mariana Trench that they've just never discussed. I mean,
70% of the ocean is unexplored, Joel.
Sorry.
You don't know.
It's just ridiculous to me. I'm sorry.
You don't know.
I mean, if they popped up
know.
a news story on CNN, whatever. Anyway, the concept to me is a bit outrageous, but they tried to keep it, in a sense, grounded with the way that the story progresses and moves forward, except for the fact that the shark is very much kind of like it just needs to do certain things at certain times. There's very much like there's a concept that I've been researching and doing writing and stuff like that with a lot of scripts, and it's this idea of agency in a film, and it's the way that the actors' roles play out over the course of the film and the impact that they actually have on the progression of the plot and the story. And there's certain kinds of stories, like a World War II story, where the actors' portrayal and their impact on the story isn't necessarily that important because it's more about World War II in that battle. Whereas a story like this, it's kind of a mix between the agency of the shark and the agency of the actor. And I felt like there wasn't really a lot of that in anything. It was kind of like things were just happening because they needed to, like, okay, well, we want to get this person eaten. Yeah. So what's the most realistic way we could set this up that they would get eaten? Right. You know? And it just kind of fell flat.
I didn't think the movie was great, but I found myself enjoying the ride while I was there. I think just to throw out some other positives there before I get into some of the things that I didn't like, and we can talk more about things you didn't like.
I do have a positive. I can't say.
You have a positive?
Yeah, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
My gosh. Okay. So I actually thought the shark looked pretty good. And they had some really good shots in there. There's one underwater sequence that I was like, ooh. Yeah. That I was like, that was really, really good and effective. It was scary. I liked, I feel like I've never seen her before. Jessica McNamee, the girl who plays Jason Statham's ex-wife.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen her before.
Her, and then also, I thought Cliff Curtis was good. He was one of the least ridiculous characters. He was pretty straightforward. Yeah. But also Shuya Sophia Kao, who plays a little girl.
She was great. Yeah. Honestly, she was one of the best actors in this entire thing to me.
Yeah. She was actually really, Kai. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So she was really good. Jason Statham was just okay for me. So Bing Lee wasn't that great. No. I didn't think.
I didn't
think
either. Their dynamic, the romantic thing, felt more than.
That's one of my negatives. Yeah. I felt like that was extremely forced. Right. Rainn Wilson was okay. I actually liked him more than I thought I was because I thought he was going to be really, really annoying the whole time, but he wasn't. Maybe I just went in with low expectations. I will say there was one scene that I did not think Ruby Rose did very well in.
There's a couple.
There was one for me, but for the most part, I thought that was the best I've ever seen her in a film. Anyways,
it didn't make sense to me that they because when you put her in a role, she's going to be edgy. Like she's got that design, the style, their haircut, and the tattoos.
They even talk about it,
right? And it didn't really felt like she needed to be edgy. It almost felt like I would have enjoyed her character more if she was a bit less like intense because she sits behind a computer and engineers stuff, and she helps design and engineer the entire like structure. Correct? Yeah. So you're like a biker engineer chick. What's your thing? I didn't really get her thing, and it just kind of annoyed. And there was one specific scene as well where a character actually really annoyed me. Where I'm gonna kind of spoil it, but like she ends up getting earlier on in the film, she ends up getting saved by Rainn. By his character Morris. He helps pull her out of the water when she's like in danger of getting eaten by one of the sharks. So he literally saves her life. And then the very next scene, they're in boats and they're kind of like headed towards another destination. And he's being a little annoying, like he's talking on his phone or something like that, or a bullhorn. And she's like, "Can we just throw him in the water?" And I'm like, he just literally saved your life. And now because you're trying to be edgy, you're like, "Oh, let's just kill him. I don't even care." It's just so it didn't really hit. Yeah. It felt like they more had caricatures and certain paths that characters needed to march down.
I would have been really interested to see, because before John Turteltaub signed on to direct this, it was going to be directed by Eli Roth.
Oh, that would have been intense. Yeah, There's no way this would have been PG-13.
No. It would have been.
There would have been R, and then there would have been like a even higher R+ cut, directors only. Yeah. So the shark just sits there and eats them one bit by bit.
That would have been really interesting. Yeah. But as for a shark movie, I thought I enjoyed it for the most part. Wasn't great.
Would have had no leg. Wouldn't have had no leg in the beginning.
Yeah, negative. I think the worst thing to me was that love story was forced. Did not work at all. Yeah. I think it kind of made Bing Lee's less of a character.
Agreed.
Her character, it just kind of diminished it a little bit.
I would have respected more if they hadn't gone down the romance path with them.
Yeah, just kind of like, hey, learn to respect each other kind of a thing, as opposed to doing that. And that was really, I felt like there were some times where I was like, oh, they could have went a little bit further there, but I think it was just a rating issue.
Yeah.
Other than that, I thought it was fine. And I think again, the thing that's most exciting about this movie to me is that with the science behind it, is that there's going to be some potential more monster movies down the road.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see. I like monster movies.
Fair enough. The positives for me is the visual style. I think they were very effective at times of kind of setting up something. There's like a scene where a guy's sitting next to a giant shark that they pull out of the water, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, any second,
that scene was a little intense.
Right?
And even though you're like,
yeah, what I needed was more moments like that where I'm kind of on the edge of my seat of like, but there's like plenty of moments where like Jason Statham's in the water and we're like halfway into the film, and I'm like, they're not going to kill him.
Right.
Like, he's not going to die, And so it's like there just wasn't any of that edge of my seat very often. It did happen like there and then a couple other spots. And then there was just plenty of moments where like you'd see something like one of the shots that happens in the trailer with Mei Ying, her little daughter, where the shark first like kind of pops up. Was very effective visually.
Yeah. Oh, that was good.
Yeah, and there was a lot of moments where I was like, wow, that's just a really interesting kind of cool style, and it looked cool, and I wanted more of that. I wanted them to build on that stuff, whereas it felt like they were just giving me cool visual style, but they weren't tying it into interesting story elements or twists. Even the scene where the shark really kind of invades an area where all the people are.
Yeah.
I'm like, there was so many cool shots, and then it just kind of like briefly is like, now people are dead.
It's more about
like,
that sequence. Unfortunately, played it more for the humor element of it than an actual
and I'm like
terrorizing thing.
Right, Eli Roth would have done many bad things, and
Right.
that's kind of what I was expecting. But again, PG-13.
Exactly.
So there was just a not enough to really, and not to be all like cheesy shark joke, but not to latch onto. There wasn't enough in the script to really like get a bite out of. That I really felt like when I walked away, I'm like, that was a good, interesting, crazy, intense experience for me. So,
no worries. What do you rate it?
I'm gonna give it a 76.
Okay,
So
that's not too far from where I'm at. I'm actually close to like a C+, 78, 79.
Yeah. Okay. Visually, it was good, like I said, and then
I thought the shark looked excellent.
Yeah.
So.
It aids it a lot because if you don't have at least that visual style, then it doesn't. And there was definitely a couple moments where I was a little bit like, good, like I would jump a little, but I don't know. I don't really want to see another. I know that they're going to make one
because there's a sequel to the book,
right? And
so I'm excited.
Made a bunch of money, so they're going to make another one. Maybe it'll be better. Maybe they'll give Eli Roth.
Hey,
probably
that'd be crazy. They can't throw that kind of money towards an R-rated film. But awesome. Anything else you want to add on that movie at all?
I don't know. There's plenty I could say that I'm kind of holding back. So got other stuff we got to get to.
Yeah.
But
no worries.
But
okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. It's a good gauge. So the next movie I got a chance to see, you did not get a chance to see, which is Christopher Robin.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this movie, and I think they did a good job with calling the movie Christopher Robin as opposed to calling it Winnie the Pooh.
Okay.
Let me just start off first with the synopsis. A working class family man, Christopher Robin, encounters his childhood friend Winnie the Pooh, who helps him rediscover the joys of life. Directed by Mark Forster, which is funny because I think he directed World War Z, and then stars obviously Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan himself, Haley Atwell, Bronte Carmichael, I don't know if that's how you say it, and then Mark Gatiss, Oliver Ford Davies. Anyways, so
one thing people should know about the podcast: never quote us on the name pronunciation of our.
I probably just
of
didn't say the right things at all.
Yeah.
So I don't think the marketing was quite as effective in kind of portraying what the movie is actually about. This movie is not really like for young kids.
Mm-hmm.
For a couple of elements, one, it's more about Christopher Robin, which I think is why it was a great idea. They named the movie Christopher Robin.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy it. I thought it was good, not great. It was endearing, had a lot of little good one-liners. All the best parts of the movie are the time that you spend with Eeyore and Pooh and Piglet and Tigger and all those people.
Yeah.
And they have Eeyore especially has a lot of really good one-liners.
Yeah.
Like really, really good one-liners.
Yeah.
He's such a downer all the time and everything's so negative.
Oh, bother.
And I did really, really enjoy that. The animation was really good too. They looked like, kind of like living stuffed animals, but like not in a threatening way. I thought that was actually
It could be scary.
good, because I know when people were first seeing images, people were like, "That's creepy." It wasn't creepy at all.
I thought it was a little creepy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, the movie,
me.
that was not creepy at all.
With the
Everything
dark lighting and like
Right.
the somber British atmosphere of like the cloudiness. It was just everything seemed
Yeah.
like thriller, like slasher.
Yeah, so it's Christopher Robin's movie, so that's the thing to remember, and it's really about him, in a similar sense that Hook was more about, less about Neverland and more about Robin Williams' character,
Yeah.
Peter, kind of remembering his childhood and what's really important in life, basically. So it's
That's
kind of
actually-
the same thing.
That's kind of the comparison I was making in my head.
Right. It's almost the same thing. This is a little bit
Less kiddish.
less kid-ish.
Because Hook was
there's
still
some,
very
there's
much
some
a
stuff
kid's
in here
film.
there's a lot of stuff that would go over my kids' heads.
Okay.
Just because they're young, though. I think kids a little bit older, in the elementary years would probably appreciate this, but also my kids aren't as familiar with Winnie the Pooh as like I was. Just I don't know if there's a lot of it marketing out there for Winnie the Pooh these days. I'm sure there is, but I'm not familiar with it.
You'd know better than I would. I have
right.
no reason to check out Winnie the Pooh stuff.
But for that, I mean, other than that, I thought it was good, well acted, appropriately like cheesy.
Yeah.
And I thought that the voice acting for all the 100 Acre Woods animals was awesome. It sounded like what I remember them sounding like in all the cartoons and movies and stuff like that.
Nice.
So I was very appreciative of that. I just felt like it was a little vanilla, and that's really the only thing that I feel like would keep this thing from being a really great movie. Is it's vanilla. They didn't take any risks. And the whole time I saw Ewan McGregor, I was like, man, I really hope they can sort out this whole Star Wars thing and get him to be Obi-Wan again soon.
That's funny.
I was just distracted the whole time because I'm knee deep in a new Star Wars book, so I'm kind of like I keep thinking about Star Wars.
That's probably not good when you go see a movie with an actor and you want to more see them in a different film.
Right. Well, I haven't seen Ewan in a while, so I kind of because I never saw Trainspotting 2 or any of the other projects he's worked on recently. So anyways, so that's what I was thinking of the whole time. It was kind of had a lot of little sweet moments. It connected with me specifically. You know how movies connect with different people for different reasons. That's the subjectivity of film, I think. But for me, I connected with it a little bit because there's this dynamic between the father and the daughter. I don't have daughters, but I have children. And there's this kind of this like, oh man, I was kind of like, come on, Christopher Robin, get your act together. I was kind of like I was invested in that relationship. So that was where I kind of related to it and had empathy towards the situation. But yeah, it was all right. I thought it was good. Could have been better, I think, if it was maybe marketed differently, too, because they kind of portray it to be like Winnie the Pooh movie. Wait, it's called Christopher Robin? Why? Well, Christopher Robin's really the main character, and that's why they stick with him most of the time. Yeah. So, any questions with it?
I mean, it didn't look like it had a lot really to connect into or latch on to.
There's not.
I'm not a huge Winnie the Pooh fan, I'll just say it.
Really?
No, I'm not attacking him.
I look at you and I'm like, dude, that is a Winnie the Pooh fan if I've ever seen
I was
him.
more like, Power Rangers, more like explosions and jumping around, and I liked loud and noisy.
Yeah.
Whereas Winnie the Pooh was always like, oh, and I'm just like, yeah.
There's a lot of that like unconventional childlike wisdom in like what Winnie the Pooh talks about and says, and I kind of like that, and he's always kind of been like that, and that's some of the stuff that I thought was endearing and nice, and I like that stuff. And
I think by the time when I was a kid and I finally found out about Winnie the Pooh, I was already too old to really feel like I enjoyed it, if that makes sense.
You're like, Winnie the Pooh, I'm too old for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I was like 7 or 8 when I first encountered Winnie the Pooh, and at that point I was already like way beyond where I felt like I needed to be. Even as a kid, I'm recognizing this.
So I did appreciate in this movie that it's a Disney film, which which is great. But I think as the movie progressed, Ewan McGregor and all the animals, a bunch of people said "poo" a bunch of times, and they didn't resort to making a bunch of lowest common denominator.
That's good
poo
because I was
jokes.
just about to.
They did not say anything.
Literally about
I was and I was like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
There was one time where he said something and like I felt like they were gonna go the joke route, but they just kind of kept moving. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they didn't go that route because I feel like that's a real cheap laugh.
Was this set? It is. Yeah. Was this set in modern times?
No. It
was set in
takes
the
place
past.
back in the day.
That's
Yeah.
what I figured because the original was set back in like the
It's like in the 40s or
50s.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, other than that, I thought it was cute, charming. I guess not.
Who would you
conservative.
recommend it to, or would you recommend it?
Yeah, I think parents of kids would probably enjoy it, and
Okay.
older kids. So like 4th, 5th, 6th, older.
So maybe what they were going for was, people grew up watching Winnie the Pooh
Yeah.
and really enjoying it, and they were trying to make a movie for that demo, and
Yeah.
it just didn't really work. But
Yeah, I did. I mean, I enjoyed it. Again, the animals are all the best parts of it. Eeyore's my favorite in this one, but I'm gonna give it an 81.
okay,
Yeah.
that's better than the Shark movie we talked
Yeah.
about.
Oh yeah. Yep. I thought it was a
old
better
Shark
film than the Meg.
Cool.
But yeah, so that's Christopher Robin. Definitely let us know what you guys thought about that. But we got one more movie to talk about. This one you saw.
Yes.
I did not get a chance to see.
Yeah.
Why don't you break it down for us?
I'm gonna break it down a little bit. I'm gonna give a preface to this and say I'm not gonna talk about some elements of this film because there's some aspects of it that are very political.
Yeah.
And we generally on the podcast don't get into politics and political discussion, whatever our views are. We just, it's not a part of what we try to do here.
Right.
But that being said, we're talking about a film called BlacKkKlansman.
BlacKkKlansman.
I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it at this point. I probably
It's
should
just
look that up.
BlacKkKlansman.
Yeah, it's BlacKkKlansman.
It's just BlacKkKlansman.
Yeah, BlacKkKlansman. There you go. So it's the synopsis for this. Ron Stallworth, an African-American police officer from Colorado, successfully manages to infiltrate the local Ku Klux Klan with the help of a white surrogate who eventually becomes head of the local branch, directed by Spike Lee. Stars a couple different people. We got Alec Baldwin, who's very briefly in it. I'm not sure why he's even like listed almost. Plays really no significant point in it. John David Washington, he's probably one of your main characters, Ron Stallworth. You have Brian Tarantino, Officer Clay Mullaney, Adam Driver as Flip Zimmerman, Laura Harrier as Patrice Dumas, Michael Buscemi as Jimmy Creek, Ken Garrido as Sergeant Trapp. There's a pretty sizable cast. Chief Bridges is Robert John Burke, who's in there, and Isaiah Whitlock Jr. as Mr. Turntine. So again, this is a Spike Lee film.
Okay.
And I don't. Have you watched Spike Lee films? Are you a Spike Lee guy at all?
I've in the past.
In the past,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know.
I'm not, and it's
Okay.
not. It was nothing against Spike Lee. I just never had a chance to kind of really get into the whole Spike Lee kind of surgence. For he had a really popular rise, like the late '80s, early '90s, and then he's kind of recently. He kind of became more of an icon and kind of a known for certain films, and then he kind of fell off a little bit as far as like popular.
Sure.
Everybody knows him, but not
Right.
necessarily knows his films. And then I believe this has actually been his most successful release, theatrical release ever, as far as like actual viewings and showings.
It's critically acclaimed.
Yep.
According to Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting some good reviews
Yeah.
from people, and I think for the most part. There were some really good elements to the story, and
It looked interesting to me. Like I really wanted to see it.
yeah, what I can say about the film itself is that the acting was pretty on point.
Yeah.
For the most part,
Adam Driver, how was he?
he was great.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think he was probably one of my favorites. Him and John David Washington were
Yeah.
probably for sure my two favorites, and
Yeah, John David Washington. He
they
looked great in the
create
trailer.
this very interesting relationship in the film between the two of them that I think. And Topher Grace is in it as well as David Duke.
Topher Grace, your
yeah.
alter ego.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. I don't talk about that guy enough, considering he's like my brother.
Venom.
Yeah. They've created a really fun dynamic, the two of them. It kind of at times is almost like a buddy cop film.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that it's that. It's much more a film about a concept, an idea,
Right.
which is race and the whole race relations and police brutality and the way the Ku Klux Klan is treated and, Black Panthers and everything like that. And it really goes into that territory, really goes into talking about and discussing the way that whites and blacks and how we treat each other and views and perspectives on it. I'm not going to make any impression or say anything in regards to how I felt like those different elements were treated in the film.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to purely break this down on the basis of what I thought is just a pure filmic type thing.
Okay.
Because again, I'm also going into this saying that I haven't seen any Spike Lee joints.
Sure.
And this is my first one. I really appreciated the acting, and I really appreciated sometimes the quirkiness, I would say, that I got from the characters and the style of the filmmaking. Some of the things that I really didn't like about the film, there was a pacing aspect.
Oh,
and
really?
I think this is one of the things about Spike Lee that he just does in his films, where things are very rapid cut at times in a way that's almost feels silly.
Okay.
And it feels like, well, I never really had a chance to like get into that moment because it was like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And then it just jumps between these different things. Very like 2 frames almost.
Yeah.
Like doosh, 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 doosh. And it just kind of like it was off-putting because it was frustrating to me because I would be getting into the film, the beginning of the characters and the story and the way it's moving forward, and then something would happen and it was this stylistic choice. You know, he would do these things at times where he had like these outlines of the characters that like float towards you, like in blank black space, like just floating towards
just an
you.
Artistic choice. Of some sort, right?
And these
Okay.
framing like the way that something would like tighten in or like zoom in
Right.
on a shot or frame in, and it would draw me out of the moment, out of the movie,
Right.
because it felt more like he was trying to stylistically say something by framing things or showing things in a specific way instead of kind of just letting it breathe and letting it be what it needed to be, if
Okay,
that makes
I
sense.
gotcha.
So it's the difference between just telling a story and portraying that visually in a way that people can take from it what it is that they're supposed to take,
Yeah.
versus being like, look at what I'm showing you. This is
Yeah.
this. And it felt like every like 10 to 15 minutes something would happen where it was very much like, look at this thing that's
for real.
happening. And it got a little frustrating because I would get into the film and then it would pull me out. And I would get in because the acting is really good.
Right.
Cinematography for the most part is really good. The other thing that I didn't necessarily like about it, and it might have just been on, and I need to research a little bit about this. So this is also based upon a true story.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
how true it is, as far as embellishing in different aspects and elements, but based on a true story. The music that went with this film at times was very fitting, but then at other times it would go in this direction that felt very 80s, like late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
Almost like a a Shaft or like blaxploitation type film from like the 80s or something. And I'm like, he might be doing that on purpose to kind of make a point, but it just didn't really fit with the tone and the style of the moment. And I felt like if he had just gone for a more standard soundtrack for things, then it would have been a kind of more... And again, he might have been doing that on purpose. He might have been saying like, look, this is what you think is standard, and I'm going to do what I think and I want is standard to try and set up a new type of standard for these types of things.
gotcha.
But all this combined, putting all those elements combined, made it like, it was almost like a high then low type experience for me.
Yeah.
It ends as well, and I will say this, it ends in a pretty strong way. You know, the whole film is kind of building towards this conclusion when you know the direction it's going. And I like the way it concluded and the way it kind of all wrapped up in a sense. But then it goes into this like very real, so it ties it to the real story, but then it goes like, this is what's happening in our current society
right.
and what's happening right now. And that was really strong.
Yeah.
Like to the point where that all happens, they're showing like real footage from like real things that are happening. And then it like, the movie ends and like nobody in the theater is saying anything. And it was like the whole movie was kind of this fun romp. It's like silly and goofy, but serious at times when it needed to be. And then it goes to this really like, oh my goodness, that's intensely serious type thing at the end. And it left me
Interesting.
with like a really bad taste in my mouth because it felt like you were almost setting me up to get to this point with this story where then you could just show me all this stuff and just throw this really intense thing in my face at the end. So
You weren't ready for it.
I wasn't ready for it. You know,
He wasn't ready.
you know, it's like the difference between telling a fictional portrayal of a real story, but then going into like a documentary, and not even like a nice documentary, like a really intense, dark documentary.
Some of the stuff that you're describing to me artistically, I feel like I might like it, but I'm not sure. I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it.
I mean,
but
I
we'll
know,
see.
I know some of the stylistic stuff. I know the quick cuts. I know the framing and the heads floating towards the screen, and I know that he always does like I forget what they call it, but it's like a dolly track shot where the characters are on the dolly and they're like moving with the camera, whereas the environment is shifting around them.
Yeah.
And he always does that in pretty much every one of his movies. That's kind of what he's known for. But I don't really feel like at this point those really aid in the story.
Okay.
It felt more, again, like you were trying to manipulate me into seeing something a very specific way and being like, look at that!
John David Washington, who is awesome. I just found out as a producer on a movie that I really like that you weren't a huge fan of, which is The Book of Eli. What?
There you go.
All right.
Yeah, so I'm going to give us a rating.
Yeah.
It's slightly higher than the Meg. I'm putting it at a 79.
Okay.
B, C+. I was close to giving into the B range, but it just kept pulling me out so many times. And that ending really left me with a pretty harsh vibe, I guess I would say.
Okay.
It's not a bad movie. I think if you're somebody especially that's really into cinema and film and want your films to kind of take on a deeper meaning, this is one I would encourage you to check out. And I'm not saying not to watch it, but just,
This is on, I have a couple of movie lists, like movies I got to get to eventually. And then I have a movie list that's like, these are more of a high priority. Yeah. This is on that high priority list along with some other ones. But okay, cool.
Yeah. So there you go.
C+ in it.
Yep.
Sweet. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. So thanks for tuning in and all that fun stuff. Real quick, just a reminder, if you want to get connected with us, you can do that via Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Real Review Media. You can email us at realreviewmedia@gmail.com. Also go to our realreviewmedia.com page to see all of that stuff. It's all there, centrally located there for you to connect with us. And you can do all that. But yeah, let us know what you guys saw about that movie. If you enjoyed it, if you had all those movies, if you enjoyed them, if you had fun, if you want to see more Jason Statham punching sharks in the face movies and stuff like that.
Yes.
And
I don't.
Yeah, I do.
I don't.
Anyways, let us know what you guys saw. Joel, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Rainn Wilson was really weird in that movie. We never even talked about it.
It was a little odd, but at the same time, I haven't really seen him in anything in a while. So
I know. Yeah. Anyway.
But anyways,
I'm done.
Guys, thanks for checking us out, and have an awesome day. It's been real.
It's been real.